Good afternoon. My name is Angelica Tostes. I am a feminist theologian and researcher at Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, an institute connected to the popular movement in the Global South. Also, I'm working as course coordinator at Ecumenical Center of Services for Evangelization and Popular Education. I'm glad to be here sharing these thoughts with you. The present contribution aims to understand the feminist hermeneutics of the Bible from the Evangelical Women's Landless Workers Movement, Movimento dos Trabalhadores Sem Terra, MST. In March 2020, just before COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic, tricontinental research about evangelicals and politics went to the first national meeting of the Landless Women, held in Brasilia, which was attended by some 3,500 women from different parts of the country. At the meeting, we interviewed 15 evangelical women from several Brazilian states, and after the meeting, 4 women leaders of the movement. To analyze the interview, we will count on the methodological contribution of Latin American feminist theologians, such as Nancy Cardoso, Ivone Gebara, and Maricel Mena Lopes. First of all, it's important to understand the evangelicalism in Brazil. I do not have too much time for that, but we must point out that 31% of Brazilian population are evangelical. We are changing the religious landscape in Brazil, which was Catholic. But who are these evangelicals here? White, cis heterosexual men? No. Although some of this kind of evangelicals claims to be the face of evangelicalism in Brazil. Datafolha research said that the face of evangelicals here in Brazil is the black poor woman living in the peripheries of the country. 58 of the evangelicals are women, among whom 43 identify as brown and 16 as black. Another point is the raising of Latin American religious fundamentalism, which took the gender and sexuality themes to create chaos and misinformation, fake news, and so on. Besides this topic, fundamentalism also spread ideas that weaken democracy and ally with neoliberalism. They encourage individualism, the idea of prosperity theology, and take away the rights of the working class and minorities. The other point is the working class is evangelical. Some popular and progressive movements are struggling with this new working class, which is no longer Catholic. The fact that the working class is now evangelical challenges the non-religious progressive movement to learn the religious grammatical and to understand the importance of religion to different aspects of the life, despite fundamentalism that must be questioned. And here we have the landless workers movement. And in the movement, there are a lot of evangelicals in the grassroots and some even in the leadership of the movement. Brazil's Landless Workers Movement, MST, is the largest militant popular movement in Latin America. The MST, at the start of the 80s, rapidly transformed the peasant struggle into a tool to challenge authoritarianism in the midst of the military dictatorship which ruled Brazil at the time. MST has deep connection with the Latin American liberation theology. Its actions, which go well beyond the struggle for land, include the pursuit of agrarian reform in order to democratize access to land and to produce health food, as well as the fight for social justice. Today, approximately 500,000 households in the countryside are members of MST. Some live in encampments, acampamentos, land occupation in throes of demand access to fallow land, while others live on the settlements, assentamentos, meaning that they have already won the land ownership through the struggle. Therefore, there are churches in the encampments and the settlements. We went to the meeting, and the theme of the first national meeting of the landless women was Women in the Struggle, Seeking Resistance. It is impossible to disregard the experience of the women who seek refuge in religion to achieve gender justice in Latin America, as Nancy Cardoso points out. Women find in their faith the word sustenance to endure life adversities. It may seem contradictory when we think of the layers of oppression that the Christian religion did and does on the woman's body for centuries. However, women have a God mixed into the simplest everyday life, such as Ivone Gebara says. I'm going to share some points of what we find out in the interview. We have a lot of pages in Portuguese of this study. You may find in Tricontinental page. First, the church as a welcome space for this woman, even in contradictory to some machista, sexist discourse of fundamentalism. The second, the moments of praise as expression and ecstasy that allow this woman to elaborate their psychological and social demands and traumas, besides cultivating spirituality in the moment. The Bible is a book of the Brazilian working class. Many women brought their Bibles to the meeting, and they seek answer for their daily lives. The dimension of the land. They find in Christian faith in the Bible readings that give them strength to occupy the land, plant and work in the movement. A more work out the vision, a more among the women. They are in the camps and the settlements, absorb fundamentalism agendas about gender and sexuality. Although they negotiate and question, there are prejudices and taboos about the theme. Even attend the traditionalist churches with the fundamentalist discourses, these women find a popular faith in religiosity that seeks a dignified life. For them, this God is not far away, but near. Rosa Maria justifies the struggle by saying, because the land is biblical, she continues, and the God speaks like it's Psalm 24, of the Lord is the land and all this fullness, and the Lord gives the land to those who struggle. God gives the land to those who are in the struggle. Now the state and the capital is the one that embarrassed everything. It's important the fact that women are not a unitarian social group, but rather they are groups fragmented and fractured by structures of race, class, religious affiliation, sexuality, colonialism, age, and health. Each of these threads of intersectionality switch together diverse ways of being a woman and being an evangelical woman in Brazil and in the movement. In this reflection, we do not want to stereotype or conclude what evangelical woman of MST is, but rather reflect of the possibility of dialogue between faith and struggle, so present in Latin America history and in the history of the Landless movement. The evangelical women of MST create their own vision about the faith and political struggle, often through the mythical religious language, looking for biblical solutions to everyday problems. The hermeneutics of the woman interview brings concrete question and is not concerned with dogmatic dimensions, although there is a zeal for spirituality and also the Bible. These concrete issues of the daily life transform this God into a partner in the trenches of the struggle for land.
I have questions. You can choose to answer them or you can choose not to, because sometimes questions are just for me also to reflect. Um, and I was wondering, and I'm sure you say that this context that you're talking from is where maybe the Catholic Church is bigger and more powerful. And I assume that these evangelicals, the growing evangelicals, are newer and yeah, maybe not as powerful. Like in this context, the landless women that you're talking about. What is interesting for me is how how does established Christianity view their feminist hermeneutics, the feminist hermeneutics of the landless women workers? Because I think all over across we've spoken about this, how there's powerful hermeneutics that are accepted, and usually any other worldview is questioned. And I was thinking, how is this form of hermeneutics viewed by the established systems? I know it might not make a difference to the evangelicals, but in my context, what I was thinking about is how sometimes um, the mainline churches or the established churches always negate or belittle the biblical hermeneutical approach of newer churches, newer movements, newer Christian movements. And I was also wondering, there might not be time for this, but I wondered which biblical texts are popular. By the way, I'm a biblical scholar myself. Right now focusing on the New Testament, but I wondered which biblical texts were popular, because I can imagine that if you're a social movement, there are certain texts which resonate with you. And but on the same note, I wondered how they deal with the problematic aspect of these biblical texts. I think you mentioned part of that, how sometimes you have the fundamentalist, and because sometimes you have this, that there's a text that you love, but then someone else problematizes it. And that's fine, because that's the academic enterprise, we should be doing that. But I wondered, how do they react to that, if they do at all? Because an option, like I said, I use conceptual blending theory, and the option is always to leave that out, leave what other people problematize, and use what works for you, what helps you. And that's all I'll say to Angelica.
Thank you very much, Shing and Diana, for your presentation. Congratulations. For me, it was really a challenge to try to explain everything in 10 minutes. So I choose to overview, to resume the questions that appears in interview. But of course, if it goes on to the interview, we have a lot of material. And the question that you asked about the most popular text, of course, was Psalm 24, because many women talk about because the Lord is the land. And I think that the promised land is a thing that connecting too much with this woman, because you have this thought that God wants you to occupy the land, wants to give you the land. So they negotiate. I use this term like in the colonial and post-colonial thought, this negotiation of a woman being in the movement that is not religious, that is a left movement, but also going to a church that is the traditional church with conservative thoughts, with fundamentalist uh, theology. So this kind of thing they connect, they negotiate. So one of the leaders of MST talked that if a woman go to the church and go to the MST, is because she kind of break a lot of fundamentalist theology, because in this kind of religion thought, fundamentalism, and also in politics conservative in Brazil, MST have a lot of persecution. They say a lot of bad things, they lie about this. Nowadays we are in the election time, and they say, no, MST, we will stole your land, we will occupy your house. So this kind of lines people heard in the church. So this woman has to do this kind of negotiating with their spirituality, but also in the movement they are engaged, they are into, and also being a leader and being activist. I choose one quote, but I didn't put in my presentation because it was too long. But I will read here and explain this kind of negotiate. Just a sec. Paula, a girl from MST in Minas Gerais, said, I reconcile one thing with another because I always want to be a missionary. And to be a militant is to be practically a missionary, which is to do a mission, work with people, discuss politically what our country is, what we are doing for, what we are looking for, our objectives. The movement works on the material issue, and the church works on the spiritual issue. One thing complements the other. So from then, to be a militant, to be a missionary is almost the same thing, because they understand that the struggle for land, the struggle for justice is the mission of God. But also, there's a lot of contradictory, especially about the sexuality, not too much about gender, about submission, this kind of things, but sexuality, about homosexuality, lesbianism. So they struggle with this, but not in a fundamentalistic way of no, but it's complicated. I don't know what to think because my pastor says one thing, the movement say another thing. It's not a stuck thing, but they struggle with these issues of sexuality. But I guess is a thing that we must work with this woman about dismantelate this fundamentalist discourse that are in the even in the church, in the settlement, in the camp.